All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 63 of Global Citizen. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and I'm also its creator. So, yeah, I've actually been on a week hiatus. Apologies, I've had some stuff to clear, but I'm back. Okay, so before we begin this episode, I actually want to pay a little tribute. So, today, Chadwick Boseman, the star of Black Panther, and he has also played multiple prominent roles as African American men who break the boundaries, such as Jackie Robinson in the movie 42, or Get On Up, which represents about the life of James Brown. So that's among a lot of his prominent roles. Recently passed away. He succumbed to cancer after 4 years battling it. The movie Black Panther has a lot of significance to me. When the movie premiered, I was having a little dilemma on what is the meaning of home, what is the meaning of identity, and when the movie premiered, it gave me a lot of epiphany. It helped me to open up my mind. So yeah, that particular scene actually inspired me to return to my own birth country, which is Indonesia. And so this episode is, well, I hope it may not be as grandiose or as what people would have expected, but I do hope it pays tribute to the recently demised Chadwick Boseman. So without further ado, I actually will be starting my episode 63. So my guest is actually Ms. Jen Mohindra here. Jen is a TCK coach. So her background is rather unique. So being a half Scottish and half Indian, she was born in Edinburgh but grew up in the Manchester, United Kingdom. Along with that, oh, sorry. Uh, okay.
Sorry, I lost you a moment.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, okay. Give a second. Yeah. Jen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Calvin.
All right. Okay. I will just continue with the introduction. Apologies about that. Yeah. Indonesia's bad Wi-Fi. I can't really do much about it. So yeah, while it has given a TCK numerous advantage, it also comes with multiple baggages, including the lack of feeling of belonging, rootlessness, and restlessness. Jen has actually found a place that she truly feels home in the United Kingdom after living there, and also with her career, she actually helps to consult and of course mentor the TCKs who is still having difficulty with it, and also with her podcast, she wants to reach out to more people who may have difficulty with it. So without further ado, let me invite Ms. Jen Mohindra, and I'll pass her the platform to introduce herself. So how are you, Jen?
Hi, Calvin. Thanks for the introduction. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fantastic actually, but I kind of worry since I think my face kind of stuck in this video. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is Indonesia's Wi-Fi. I can't really do much about it, but
No problem.
as long as you can still hear me, we can still pass the spotlight to you.
Yeah. So, as you said, I'm a TCK, which I discovered. Let me think. Probably about just under 10 years ago, when I was talking to somebody who I'd just met, who happened to be from Kenya, and she asked me where I was from, and I said that I'd lived there, and I sort of went through and then we moved to, and then we moved to, and then we moved to, and she said, "Oh, you sound like a TCK, a third culture kid," and I wasn't sure quite what that was, but she pointed me in the right direction online. And that's how I discovered that I'm a TCK. So as you say, yes, I'm half Scottish, I'm half Indian. I was born in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and I was actually adopted in Edinburgh. And then I only lived for my first year there. And the family that I grew up with, we then moved to Melbourne. I lived there for a few years. After that, we came back to the UK and I lived in England, just outside Manchester for a number of years. And then we moved to Nairobi and I lived in Kenya for 5.5 years. And then after that, it was back to Australia and I spent my teenage years in Perth. And then when I was old enough to make my own decisions and have my own independence, I did what felt like was the natural progression for me, which was to do the next move, which was over to Sydney on the other side of the country. And I kind of got to the point where I was feeling quite settled and comfortable in Sydney. But I'd always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to go and explore Europe, which is kind of difficult to do from Australia, just because of the distance. And then I was reunited with my birth family, which led me to then move to London, which is where I've now been living for the last 16 years. So yeah, feeling pretty settled, and London is my current home.
Okay, before I get on with the very first question, I just need to ask, is there any other plans to move around again, or you will permanently make London as your base?
I think that's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it, for a TCK? Do we ever permanently settle? Not quite sure. There's been a few sort of records broken for me since I've been living in London. One is that I have lived here for 16 years, and that is the longest that I have lived in any place. Another is that the home that I live in, I've been here for 10 years, and that's also a record because prior to this, the longest that I'd ever lived in one single dwelling had been 5 years. So on the one hand, it's yeah, great, feeling settled, smashed all these records, happy to be here. But then in the back of my mind, there is always this, I wonder what it would be like to go and live somewhere else. Do I really want to spend the rest of my life in one place? Do I really want to stay within the big city? So yeah, it's home, and I think London will always be one of my homes. But at the same time, watch this space.
You actually hold the record of being in one place longer. I think that even surpassed my own. The longest I've been in my second home, Singapore, I was there for 15 years. So you surpassed me on that.
Only
So
just.
congratulations. All right, Jen, I will start with the very first question. So, which play would you? How would you define your home? Though? Is it more towards the people, or is the location itself? Because for your case, you've had a very unique experience of actually meeting your own birth family on another side of the world where you're growing up. So, yeah, is it more towards the people for you or the location itself?
I think that's a great question. It's one I often ask people is what makes somewhere home? And for me, um, it's a lot to do with the people. So I left my people in Perth and moved to Sydney and started afresh. But I liked the people, I liked the community there, and I felt very able to make Sydney my home. And I didn't know that I was going to stay there for as long as I did. In fact, when I moved to Sydney, my plan was just to go and visit for a holiday for a couple of months and then go backpacking around Europe and just see what came next. But I settled in very quickly to Sydney. I loved it there. And that became one of my homes. I didn't have family there, but I had a good network of friends. And because of all the moving around that I had done, that felt like a first for me, to have such a steady network of friends that I'd built up over the years. And so that really led to me feeling like Sydney was my home. Now that all kind of changed when I met my birth family. It was like, oh, I have family in the UK now. So having moved to the UK, it was tough in the beginning because I didn't know anybody except for my immediate family who I was just reunited with. But now I've sort of reached that same sort of position that I had in Sydney, in terms of I've got a network of friends, and also have my family here. So yes, it's a lot to do with the people. Now, another thing, that when I moved from Sydney to London, if I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, "Why did you move to London? The weather is so much better in Sydney." And I used to say, well, I didn't come for the weather. I thought about lots of things that were important to me, and the weather just kind of got put on side. But I feel very comfortable in warm climates. As soon as I'm in a hot country, that makes me feel at home too. So it's a number of different things, really.
All right. Okay. This is actually something that I saw in the TCK chat groups. Yeah, because we are part of the same group in the community in Facebook. I believe there was one question whereby you mentioned of you are exasperated because when people ask you are not Scottish, and when they see your surname is Mohindra, which is actually an Indian origin, then they will be asking, wait, you're not Indian, so you are neither one of them, and you have a UK passport, yeah?
I
So,
have a UK passport and an Australian passport.
oh, okay. Oh, that's even more confusing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I want to ask you is your experience on repatriation. Is that how do you feel though when you encounter people from those two countries for one thing, and then also with your ethnicity, like when you mention about all of this that where you are from, every one of them will be like, but you don't look like you belong with us in a sense. So yeah, Jen.
Yeah, it's the perpetually excuse me, difficult question, the old "where are you from?" And yeah, for me, it's there's a number of different layers in what, as Ruth Van Rooken refers to as the TCK Petri dish. So my Petri dish has adoption, it has TCK, it has being mixed race. There's a whole bundle of stuff in there. When I've come back to passport countries, so the majority of my life has been spent between Australia and the UK. I have passports in both. Now, when I go to Australia, everybody thinks I'm British. When I'm in the UK, they hear a slight Australian accent. They don't think I'm British, they think I'm Australian. So it makes me the perpetual foreigner. Wherever I go, wherever I am, I'm seen as a foreigner. And I I don't really think too much about it. I think I've got to the point where I'm comfortable within myself and who I am. If people want to, people like to put labels on you. Society loves to put a label on you, put you in a box, make them fit where in a place that's comfortable for them. And I often don't sit in that comfortable place for them, but for me, that's not an issue. So yeah, in the UK, I'm Australian. In Australia, I'm British. And when I was moving around growing up, it just used to confuse people in terms of the old "where are you from?" And say, well, I'm British because I have a British passport. Oh, but you don't sound it. You haven't looked, you don't look like it. You haven't lived there. So I think these are all sort of very common themes for TCKs, which I'm sure your audience will be able to relate to.
Yeah, that's a definite. So yeah, among the current viewers, there's actually two TCK. I will give them their thought. I will give them their acknowledgement later on. Yeah. So yeah, back to the question though. So this is actually, if you don't mind, I want to piggyback on what you say. Yeah. So what kind of questions or situation has irked you most when you meet a monoculture? And well, the thing is like what you mentioned, people like to put people in a box because they are afraid of their familiarity or they just want to stick with what they know. What situation do you feel irks you the most as a TCK? And what would you advise though if a monoculture actually do meet a TCK, and what kind of question you feel should be avoided or you feel is disrespectful?
I think I think this goes back for me. As you're asking me the question, I'm reminded of my experience of when I moved from Kenya to Perth in West Australia. And I was 13 then, and I was the new kid at school, and people were asking me, where had I come from? Where was I before? And it was a bit of a difficult question because I couldn't say, well, I'm British, because that didn't feel like it sat right. So I just used to say, well, I was living in Nairobi and then we moved here. But the monocultural kids at my school in Perth had never heard of Nairobi. And so they kind of gave me strange looks and said, where's that? And I'd sort of look at them in disbelief, thinking, how can you not know where Nairobi is? So I'd say, well, it's in Kenya. And again, I'd get the quizzical looks and I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, how can these people not know what's wrong with people in this country,
I
And then,
presume if you say, "Oh, it's in Africa," then they'll be like, "How come you?" Yeah, yeah,
well, it kind
uh,
of went on from Nairobi to Kenya, still got the quizzical looks. And I'd say, Kenya, it's a country, it's in East Africa. And then they'd say, oh, you mean South Africa? And this used to happen over and over again. So I got to the point of just saying I lived in Africa, kind of biting my tongue as I did so and gritting my teeth. And then I don't know, that whole experience just really kind of made me feel different. And I felt like they just looked at me as some kind of weirdo, some kind of freak. Who is this person that comes from this strange place? She doesn't look like us. She doesn't sound like us. But that was back when I was 13. I guess now, in terms of what irks me, it still comes down to that same question. It's the classically hard question for TCKs, the where are you from? And I probably, like most TCKs, have a catalogue of pre-prepared responses, and you have to assess each situation on the spot, which takes up brain calories, and choose which one you're going to give, depending on the location, depending on the context. And what irks me is when I've chosen one of those answers and people come back and they either question me, or in terms of, it's like they don't believe me. It's like I've told something that's not true. They have disbelief, which again just kind of leaves you with a little bit of, oh, are they trying to make me feel like an outsider, or some sort of stranger, or the whole weirdo thing going on again. So it happens a lot when, if I want to give the one word answer, where are you from? Scotland. Oh, you don't look Scottish. yeah, it sounds Scottish. And it's like, well, are you telling me I'm a liar, you know? And the other one is around my being mixed race. And most of my life, I have passed for being white. And when I tell people that I'm mixed race and they ask, you know, what's the mix? And oh, but you don't look Indian. And again, I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said that.
You make a lot of money with that.
If only.
Okay, yeah. For the new viewers who's just tuning into the show for the very first time, yeah. So Global Citizens is a platform that advocate third culture kid and other multicultural. And I'm so sorry. I think you guys might hear the motorcycle outside my house. Right with that. Okay, so yeah, it's an online platform, an online webcast whereby I've invited individuals who, like myself and Jen, we are both third culture kids, or we would actually, I've invited international speakers, expatriates, global nomads. So, in order to actually educate individuals who may not understand about this lifestyle, a lot of the stereotype that's associated is that we live an incredibly beautiful, glamorous life. But the thing is that it's, well, some of us are fortunate enough for that, but they actually come with a lot of difficulty with it, like what Jen has mentioned so far with her background. For one thing is that being a third culture kid, it's not like when you go for a holiday to a new country and then you enjoy there, you are back to your home country after a few days or a week or so. For third culture kids, we grow up outside of our passport country. We have to adapt to our host's mindset, their perspective, point of view, which in the end makes us, like what Jen has mentioned, it makes us an outsider to people from our host country or even that of our ethnicity. So, like one further example I like to tell people is that if let's say I tell them that I'm an Indonesian, they will tell me something like, "Oh, I've been to Bali, I've been to Batam." I'm sorry, guys, that's not an entirely relatable experience because those areas are built for expats. They are not like what a native would actually live with. And the thing is that there's a lot more history to that. So if you have experienced it or you have done it, please understand this stereotype is incredibly frustrating to us. And please understand what is the difference. All right. So yeah, actually will have one. I actually will carry on with Jen's career soon, but this is actually a one final session to actually to get to know her better. Yeah. So Jen, for yourself, right? Has the life of a TCK been a positive experience to you, or would you say there has been a curse to it to a certain extent? It's because this is actually suggested by one of my viewers. So yeah,
I think, like with most things, there's positives and not such positive aspects to it. Overall, I think that the TCK experience is so rich and gives us such a wealth of different experiences that it puts us in a great position if we're able to leverage those positives to be able to use them to our advantage to move forward. But on the negative side of things, you know, things like the experience that I described of moving to Perth from Kenya and just finding that an incredibly difficult move. There's there was a question that I asked to a number of TCKs recently about, you know, what was your hardest move? And for me, it was that one at the age of 13 from Kenya to Australia. And the resounding response from other people, other TCKs, was that probably around 12 to 14 is a really tricky age to move. And a lot of people had experienced a hard move at that age. Now, for me, I went from a country where I had a very sort of outdoor lifestyle in terms of going to game parks. We used to go caving, rock climbing, hiking, and it was all about the wildlife, really. And then I moved to Perth, which was very much a monocultural environment. Nairobi, there was a whole bunch of expats. That's the majority of the people that I knew there. And then moving to Perth in a very monocultural society, I found it incredibly difficult to fit in, and I'd never felt like I belonged there. The other thing that was difficult was changing schools. So of course you've got the trying to make new friends as you move each time, but also I had the extra complexity of changing school systems. And so I went from the British school system in Kenya to the Australian school system, and I didn't fit in according to the age, and they put me in the year that they thought I should be for my age, and I had done all the work and in year 10, and I just got bored and kind of lost the will a little bit. So those sorts of things were particularly difficult, and I found it difficult to make new friends even as I got older. After I left school and then I went to college and then I started working, I kind of retreated into myself a lot because I was basically not happy with the responses I was getting from people to my varied background. And so it was easier just to kind of stay away from people. It's partly why I enjoyed the move to Sydney so much, was because I felt like people accepted me for who I was, and particularly moving to London, because London is so multicultural, it's so diverse. It's been very easy for me to just slot in here. But coming back to the positives, the negatives, or the challenges, I'd say that those have been the sort of biggest challenges that I've faced, along with, I guess, the traditional sort of feelings of rootlessness and restlessness. For me, the rootlessness was compounded by having been adopted as well and not having that sort of family background. And that sort of itchy feet feeling. Is this the place I want to settle? Do I want to move on? I think that expanded into my my career as well, sort of not really feeling like I wanted to just stay in the same career for all of my life, because my life had been one of change, always sort of moving around. But on the positive side of things, I mean, I look back and I wouldn't change that nomadic upbringing. I just think I had such a fantastic opportunity to have spent those 5.5 years in Kenya, for example. Such a different sort of lifestyle, such an exposure to, something so different to my life that I'd known in the UK and also in Australia. So I think that what that's given me is a much sort of broader viewpoint and an awareness of people's differences, different cultures, and tolerance. Because I've seen how different people live. I've lived in those different environments, and therefore seen that, underneath it all, we are people. So positives, challenges. I think the positives definitely win.
Okay, that's a really beautiful answer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Since you already mentioned it, yeah, I actually will have some question regarding on what you say. But for now, we actually will explore a little bit more of your career as a TCK coach.
Ah,
So yeah, if you don't mind sharing with us, is like how did you first get started on it, and also like what were you doing previously that until it eventually leads you to this very career now? Because the thing is as you mentioned, yeah, you have that feeling of restlessness of just staying in one place, whether it's a location or even as a of your career. And this is now your current career as a TCK coach. Maybe you don't, if you don't mind, please share us on that.
for sure. So yeah, as I mentioned, and as you said, I didn't have a traditional career path. So I worked in a number of different fields, different industries, tried different things, and it was kind of just felt like that was a natural thing for me because of having lived in different countries and had different experiences and had a life of change. That kind of followed through with my career as well. So I started working in hospitality when I first finished school and college, and then got into customer service, telecommunications, and then as a mature age student, I did my degree, which was in computer science. I worked in IT for a bit, and then made the move to the UK, and then got to the point of, oh, actually, I'm not sure that I really want to stay working in IT. I don't think it's really quite what I thought it was going to be. But oh gosh, I've spent all this time and effort doing this degree now. What shall I do next? And a friend of mine said to me, oh, it sounds like you could do with the help of a coach. And I didn't really know what that entailed, what that meant. But I did some research and I ended up finding a coach for myself. And I was very much taken with the coaching process, the coaching experience, and how much I learned about myself. And I thought, I think I'd quite like to do this myself. But it felt a little uncertain for me at that time. And so I did take another route, which was to get into finance. Now, with all of the different jobs that I'd had, I think they did kind of fall into a good fit for a TCK because they each had some sort of international flavor or working with people from different backgrounds. And so, even though at the time it sometimes felt like I was moving from one thing to another that wasn't necessarily related, when I look back, each sort of step of my career sort of built upon the one before, and I was able to transfer skills and knowledge, even though it didn't always feel like it in every step. So more recently, I got to the point of doing some more soul searching, if you like, and thought I want to do something that feels more meaningful than the work that I was doing within finance. And it was a friend of mine, again, that said to me, Jen, you would make an excellent coach. And I thought, oh yeah, that's that thing that I thought about all those years ago. So I did some more research, did my coach training, and in doing my training, realized that I had been doing a lot of this stuff anyway without realizing it. So anyway, I completed my training and then thought, okay, so who can I help the most? Who can most benefit from the service that I have to offer? And what can I say? It's TCKs. That somebody said to me, no, I said to somebody, There's nothing like being understood by somebody who's been there. So even though as TCKs, we all have such unique journeys, unique experiences, we have this common thread of understanding just from the commonality of having moved and lived in different places. So that's a little bit about how I came to be a TCK coach.
Yeah, I can relate to that to a certain extent. I started Global Citizen because I was actually frustrated with the repatriation process at that time. Because Indonesia being a developing country, and I grew up in Singapore most of my life, it makes an incredibly different dynamic. Like there was once when I was actually attending a meeting here, it was a 5 hours meeting. The first 3.5 hours is not
Oh
even
no.
an actual meeting. They were mingling around. They were doing some bonding session with a bunch of people that I'm trying to just to be respectful. I don't even know who you are, and second, I don't give a damn who you are. I don't care about all of these things. I'm supposed to be here for work, and you guys are talking about things that's irrelevant to it. And the remaining 1.5 hours is not even an actual meeting. It is something that could be done by a newsletter email blast. So that was something that was really frustrating to me because in Singapore, let's say you're given a 30 minutes, you need to finish your presentation within 30 minutes. And maybe there'll be time whereby people take maybe a 5 minute breaks or something, but it's still within a time frame that you're given. Then you have to proceed on to the next. So yeah, I get to a certain extent where you're coming from for that, and I truly do appreciate. There needs to be a lot more consultancy and coaching for a TCK. So yeah, moving on from that. Okay, earlier, you mentioned on multiple facets of your career, some, until from IT to finance, before finally leading one as what you're currently doing now. What has been the ups and downs of it? Because, and if it's okay, I actually want to ask also on career. TCKs tend to pursue a career with somehow related to autonomy, purpose driven, or like what you mentioned, with an international exposure. I think this is rooted with our needs to belong to the bigger part of the world as compared to just being constrained in one area of that. So yeah, maybe if you don't mind sharing with us about how has it been so far as a TCK coach for yourself, and also, what challenges have you encountered with the people that you have consulted with?
I'd say a lot of people come to coaching because they're feeling stuck. And when you're feeling rootless or restless, that often goes hand in hand with a feeling of being stuck. And it might be because you have too many options and you don't know which one to choose. So you kind of, rather than make a choice, you kind of sit where you are. Or it might be that you're scared that you're going to make the wrong decision. So again, you kind of just stay where you are, feeling stuck. Or it might be that the options you have are not good options. And so you don't want to make any of them because none of them really stand out for you. So I think really that feeling of being stuck is a very common issue that people experience. And when you're there with that feeling of being stuck, then that can have quite an impact on your different aspects of your life. You know, your confidence slips, your relationships suffer, your work suffers, and then so coaching can sort of really help you sort of get out of that stuck feeling common one is where to move next, and is that going to be the final destination, and how can we make sure that the next move is the right one for you. And that might be, as you mentioned before, that might be a physical move to, another location to live, or it might be a career move. Finding a career that really suits you and that you're going to be happy with it's a tricky thing to do. And I think we're moving away from the sort of old-fashioned sort of career paths in terms of, my parents, both sets of parents, would have chosen a career, a path, maybe even one organization, and worked in that field for the rest of their lives. Whereas now, I think we're moving sort of away from that. It's much more acceptable to have a career change. And if you find yourself in a position that you're not enjoying, then it's much more acceptable now, I think, to make a move and find something else that might be more acceptable to you.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Earlier, you mentioned on issues on intercultural. Yeah. So this is okay. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, I'm paying tribute to the late Chadwick Boseman, who recently passed away after fighting colon cancer for 4 years. So along with him, recently an iconic African American man, Kobe Bryant, who is actually a TCK, has recently passed on also. And 2020 has not been an incredibly a year that I think most people want to remember. For one thing, is that everything seems to be going kaput. For one thing, we can't even go out of the house. That's one. But a lot of issues that's actually being used to the source of this pandemic, like what happened with the recent xenophobia attacks on the Asian community, for one, and two, there's also been multiple deaths of men and women of African American origin. So this has, I don't think this is something anybody want to remember. This is incredibly painful thing. So how do you feel the more awareness of knowledge on intercultural, as earlier you mentioned that we all deep down we all are people. We all are people in the end. How do you feel this knowledge could be spread more and for people to actually accept it instead of trying to defend a certain ideal or institution that because they're familiar with it, they don't want to change for it? So yeah, Jen?
Well, I think we have, our rich experiences and exposure to different cultures, which allows us to sort of see through. And as you say, underneath we are just people. Now, how to help others that haven't had our sort of varied background, I think one of the easiest things we can do is around communication. So talking to people, having a voice, being heard, and a lot of people's, you mentioned xenophobia and stuff. That I think comes a lot around fear and fear of the unknown. So if we as TCKs are able to speak about our experiences, not just within our community, but for our voices to be heard outside of the TCK community as well, then that puts us in a good position to be able to share our knowledge to try and help with some of those issues.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think the thing is that people just do not want to sit down. Everybody want to feel that, hey, my message is the most important, and we don't have really have time or don't want to make time in order to understand what is actually going on outside of what we are actually doing.
Mm.
So I agree with what you said on that. Yeah. Okay. So well, we have seen a lot of tragedy. We have seen a lot of pain this year. So I think it's while it's not an issue to be ignored, I think also we have to be able to move forward. We have to be able to learn. Yeah.
Mm.
What do you think though? Like as for yourself being a TCK coach, with the rise of trends for remote working, there will be a lot more time whereby corporations now understand that there is a multicultural community outside of what they've always been doing. How do you feel though this could be like a certain kind of guideline to the, I think if we can call it a society that is currently living on the internet?
Sorry, I'm not quite sure your question, but how do we?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a, in a sense, it's an extension. Is that by the people, especially in a common setting like a workplace or a school, by being more aware of a multicultural community, how do you think this could be more beneficial?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting one at the moment because of lockdown. That we've experienced in so many countries, and sort of rather than sort of getting out and mixing with people as we normally do, we've sort of been so confined in our homes. But on the flip side of that, it's given a lot of people a lot more time to think about things, to think about what they really want, what might be important to them. In terms of the sort of that sort of multicultural aspect in the workplace, I think it's, again, it just comes down to sort of open communication. My background in finance prior to coaching has been in large organizations, and there's some of the sort of bigger banks and stuff, and it's been a big increase in the last, I don't know, the last 14 years that I was working in finance, in terms of programs around diversity and inclusion. And that, I think, is helpful, but there's a lot more that can be done. But I think, like with anything, it's not about having a reliance on other people to make it happen, on large organizations to put these programs in place. It all starts with individuals. So it starts with you. And so how do you feel about these issues? What can you do to make your own personal difference? I think that's really important.
Yeah. Okay, Jen. This is going to be my last question.
Yeah.
So, how do you hope to, from your guidance and even other means such as your podcast? By the way, guys, the link to Jen's podcast is in the description box. Please check it out. Yeah, one of my recent guests, Lee Ji Won, was actually on the show recently. So do check it out, guys. So yeah, how do you feel though, like for your guidance or your podcast could assist the younger generation of TCK? Because I'm hoping that by the time the next generation comes, this kind of intercultural knowledge is becomes such a norm that to them it's just okay. It's we are used to it by now. But the thing is that as we know, certain things can't change like just within a snap. For one thing, earlier I mentioned about racism. It's been going on for 100 years. It's not going to change anytime soon, sadly. I mean, there has been multiple attempts. There has been a lot of things that dwindle it, but at the end of the day, it's still not just go away with it a step. Do you have any other things, maybe like books or advice? And also, please talk with us a little bit more about your podcast and how your career contributed to it.
So yeah, the podcasts that I've been doing, I've been having a lot of fun with those, speaking with other TCKs and hearing about their experiences and um, hearing about the sort of common themes of things that we've experienced, both again in terms of the challenges and benefits that we have of TCKs. And the feedback that I've been getting so far from the podcast has been wonderful in terms of, some people that didn't even realize that they were TCKs, like myself 10 years ago, hadn't heard of the term. And so there's this wonderful feeling of, wow, I'm not alone. I'm not that outsider. I'm not the weirdo. Tribe, here's my people. And so having that knowledge that there's other people out there and that you're not alone, I think that's tremendously helpful. Well, I was going to say particularly for the younger TCKs, but I think TCKs of any age. My audience has been quite varied in terms of age group, which is nice that it's reaching out to all sorts of different people. In terms of advice for people, I think there's the classic one has to be what's known as the TCK Bible, the Ruth Van Viken and book. What others? I've been reading another one of hers, Letters Never Sent, which has been tremendously helpful as well. In terms of advice, I think it's always good to remember that our experiences, even though they may come with difficulties, with challenges, we have had such a rich opportunity. And I'm not going to say when we're able to embrace that and really leverage our journey to our advantage and really focus on the benefits, then that can be a really an amazing thing. It's not necessarily something that you can do by yourself, and working with a coach can obviously help you, but also the various communities that are out there for TCKs. So, there's the Facebook groups. I've created a Facebook group. There's Slack communities, there's podcasts, there's lives like this. I think this all helps to understand the sort of common things, issues that we face, and knowing that you're not alone. There are communities out there. You can talk to other people because talking is great, and there is help out there and support should you need or choose to use it.
All right. That's actually my last question. So before I sign off, I need to thank these amazing individuals who actually tune in. So Jason Patrick Vogel, Jason and his brother Ben both have been on my show. His brother actually hosted me once on his own show, and well, they've been really supportive of what I'm doing. So thanks so much, brother. Kritika, thank you so much. Always appreciate your help. This is G1. Yeah, she's here. Hi. Okay, and lastly is Miss Sarah Short. I'm not sure who this lady is. Is she a connection, Jen?
Hi, Sarah.
All right, wonderful. All right, all right. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and the rest of you who actually just also watched the show. Yeah, other than that, I actually don't have anything else on. Jen, do you have anything you want to say?
No, just thank you so much for the opportunity, Calvin. I'll be tuning into your further episodes, as I hope people do with my podcast as well.
Yeah, that's a definite. That's a definite. Yeah. So, guys, do tune in to Jen's podcast. People like us. It's on Spotify and on Anchor. The link is already in the description on the description box. Other than that, there's also a referral code for you guys for like Airbnb. I know you guys can't travel now, but it's always good to have it, right? And also, if you guys are interested to pursue other means such as podcasting, like what I'm doing, there's a link to StreamYard in the link in the description box. You guys can get a $10 discount. So other than that, yeah, just please stay safe, take care of yourself, wash your hands, put on your mask, maintain physical distancing. I don't like to call it social distancing, guys, because I'm actually a lot more social now since the pandemic happened. So do take care of yourself, and yeah, God bless, and see you guys.
Thanks. Bye, Calvin.
Welcome.